Hello and welcome to another episode of our From the Helm series here at Bell Direct. I'm Grady Wulff, Market Analyst with Bell Direct, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Scott Kirkland, the Managing Director and CEO of EMVision Medical Devices. EMVision is developing a portable brain scanner for rapid detection, point of care and monitoring of stroke diagnosis, which is going to be a game changer in the global stroke industry. So let's dive straight in and talk to Scott. Scott, thank you so much for joining me today. Now, what an exciting time to be in the space of healthcare with so many eyes in the space right now, especially addressable markets growing around the world for stroke. For our investors who may not know about EMVision Medical Devices and what you guys are up to, can you give us a brief synopsis of what the company does?
Sure, Grady. Pleasure to be here. And we were spun out of the University of Queensland in 2017, and we're seeking to reduce the burden of stroke and traumatic brain injury. We have two products that we're commercialising, the EMV device, which is a bedside brain scanner, and the first responder device, which is an ultra lightweight helmet. I've brought one with me today, so you can
let's
have a look.
So for those looking, it's literally just there.
It's about 10 kilograms.
Yep.
And I was mentioning I don't get a lot of gym time these days, but we can it can be carried in a backpack by paramedics.
So how does it work, looking at the device right now?
Sure. So it's the closest parallel that you would have had come into contact with would be full body scanners at the airport when you walk through and you put your arms up. Very similar, but we operate at a lower frequency. So we're sending radio frequency signals into the body, into the brain. And we're looking at, firstly, the changes in dielectric properties. Is it a stroke or not, and what type? And the reason we're focusing on stroke is because time is brain.
Yes.
So the earlier a diagnosis can be made, is it a stroke or not? And if so, what type? Bleed or blockage? The earlier an effective triage, transfer or treatment decision can be made, and then that leads to better patient outcomes.
Now, there's nothing like this on the market right now.
That's right. So there's smaller CTs, but they're still hundreds of kilograms.
And they're not on the road. They're in hospitals. You need to get to hospitals as quick as you can without even knowing what's going on.
Correct.
Amazing. The company is developing diagnostics in the neurology space, as we mentioned. Can you tell us some more about the clinical settings and the kind of programs you're working on right now?
So the EMU device is designed to be used in rural and regional EDs to support front door decision making, and in larger hospitals in an ICU or in a stroke ward to keep a closer eye on patients that may be at risk of deterioration. The first responder is designed, on the EMU, we are shortly starting this month, in fact, our pivotal trial for the EMU to support an FDA de novo clearance. That's expected to enroll up to 300 patients across 6 sites, 4 in the US, 2 in Australia. And then the first responder device is designed to be carried by paramedics to the scene with expert guidance from neurologists by telehealth, and again, improving that urgent decision making.
Now, you have achieved some really encouraging results in the first trials of the pre-validation trials that you've seen for both products. Can you talk to us about what you've seen in these results and how important efficacy is in these trials?
Sure. So we had really strong sensitivity, specificity data from those studies, which gives us plenty of confidence to move into our pivotal trial. The clinical feedback was really strong. Sensitivity, specificity for hemorrhage or not, it's about 92% sensitivity, 85% specificity. And the feedback we have is that it's certainly clinically useful. And particularly in the context of our devices, when you, again, very portable, very easy to use, very cost effective. We're not trying to replace MRI or CT, but fill a gap where those devices are not available.
So with that working on the road, does the images show up straight away for the paramedics in the ambulance, or how does it work? Is it connected to a mobile device? Or
so it's funny. The paramedics tell us, don't give us another tablet or phone to charge. Space, they don't want to worry about that, and space is at a premium. But essentially, the device can be controlled up the top or on an app via tablet or phone. And then the output can be sent to a neurologist via telehealth. And we're working with a group locally called Zeus for the Australian context. And they can guide that decision making, whether it's triage, transfer, or treatment.
And they'll simply say, there's a stroke happening.
There's lots of different decisions. So depending on where the patient is, if they are out at Dingo Creek,
somewhere in the middle of nowhere,
middle of nowhere, there's an urgent decision. Do we go to the next nearest hospital, or do we need to go further to a comprehensive stroke centre because this patient may need urgent surgery, thrombectomy, right? The other context, there are opportunities to potentially treat in field for patients with ischemia or blockage. There's very effective clot busting drugs. For patients with hemorrhages, there's very effective blood pressure management. So there's different treatment pathways that can potentially be pursued in the field in the future.
Yeah, and so talking about funding, obviously in healthcare, it's really important to get the funding needed for those clinical trials, which are increasingly expensive as they go on. You've had some significant non-dilutive funding, which is incredible for a market space like this, when investors never want to be diluted, as you know, on the market scape. But what do you see that these experts are seeing in you? So obviously we had the Australian Stroke Alliance send some money, and other different organisations. So clearly there's a lot of confidence in the company in what you're doing. What do you think the experts see from their perspective?
Sure. So we're really, really lucky, really fortunate and grateful for the domestic and federal and state level grant support. So it's totaled about $20 million to date. The Australian Stroke Alliance secured $40 million through the Medical Research Future Fund. We've received 8 of that. And they are very much focused. So I mentioned CT does a great job, but they are not devices because they're very large, they're expensive, they're complex, and they need specialist operators like radiographers. They're not devices that can go at every bedside, and certainly not in every ambulance. There's a few in ambulances, multi-million-dollar trucks, about 40 globally, doing some great work, but there's a reason there's only 40, right? So the Australian Stroke Alliance, they've set out to essentially enable any standard ambulance in Australia to be a stroke-capable ambulance. So that includes equipping ambulances with lightweight scanners, like our device, training the paramedics in the use of the devices and stroke scales and other elements, and then integrating telehealth as well. And there's a particular focus on what they describe as golden hour treatment. So this is the first hour from the onset of the stroke, when there is the best opportunity to effectively reverse the stroke in many cases. So if you can treat early enough, you can reverse the symptoms, and these patients can live a normal life. But the reality is it's kind of single digit today percentage of patients that are getting golden hour treatment.
Wow. So with every hour that passes, how quickly can they degenerate?
Well, so the statistic is it's 1.9 million brain cells dying every minute in the event of a stroke. And in the context of, we have billions, but the brain ages dramatically during that time. And a lot of the key drugs are typically only licensed for use up to 4.5 hours from the onset of the stroke. So there's a very small window. Thrombectomy, which is clot retrieval, can be done a little later, but whether it's a blockage or whether it's a bleed, the earlier you can treat, the better the outcome. It's very simple, and that's kind of unequivocal these days. So, but you do need a reliable diagnosis before you can take that patient down the appropriate pathway.
So a massively growing market around the world, not just in Australia. But launching into market takes a bit of competitive edge when you look into any market space. But as there is no competitors, how are you going to position yourself in the market?
Well, again, it's not replacing CT or MR. It's about filling that gap. And like in the same way that ultrasound doesn't replace MRI, but it's very good for fetal growth development, muscular injuries, all these different things. There are some efforts to make smaller CT, smaller MR, and they've certainly delivered some quite impressive size reductions. But when you go down that path, there are typically material performance trade-offs, and those machines are still around 400, 500, 600 kilograms. So they're not devices that can be carried in a backpack. Can't carry it in a backpack. So we do think our value proposition is certainly unique for our market.
Absolutely. Now, talking about the US, the biggest market in the world for any healthcare company, that's one of your targets right now. Can you tell us about the addressable market and the commercial model that you're going to take?
Sure. So one of the interesting things with the US is we talked about the two types of stroke. There's a blockage and there's bleeds. Blockages are usually about 80% of strokes. And there are drugs to treat, TPA or clot retrieval. The patients in the US that are getting TPA, it's only around 23%. And then those that are getting clot retrieval, it's around 27%. So there are a whole lot more patients that could be treated, let alone treated much earlier, particularly in the golden hour. So when we look at in the US for the EMU, the bedside device, and we look at ICU, stroke wards, those rural regional clinics, we're estimating around 10,000 units. With the first responder device, there's over 60,000 road and air ambulances. So multi-billion-dollar markets, very, very large indeed. It's kind of where do you start? That's the key question for us. And it's those rural centres and then those comprehensive stroke centres, of which there's about 1,600.
Now, you received $15 million of a strategic investment from a New York Stock Exchange listed company. Can you tell us about that and what they're seeing in the company? Because a lot is coming your way.
Sure. So that was a $15 million investment from Keysight Technologies at 205 to acquire 8.7%.
Yeah.
And Keysight, for those that aren't familiar, is a leader in test and measurement technology. Okay. They have a market cap of around $30 billion US. We have a long-standing relationship with them. It's been a very fruitful relationship. They have customized and developed bespoke components for our scanners that are effectively the brains in many ways in our devices. And we have a supply agreement as well with elements of exclusivity with that agreement. And they are motivated to grow their healthcare category. And because their components are embedded in our scanners, our market is effectively their addressable market as well. So they're really excited about the opportunity, and they were motivated to help us accelerate our development, our path to market, and drive adoption as quickly as possible.
Now, as of 31st December, you had about $15.7 million in cash. Does that give you sufficient runway to get through these clinical trials to commercialization?
So we're well funded to execute on our pivotal trial for the EMU device and also on our feasibility trial for the first responder device. And that trial is also starting this month. So
pathway to commercialization, how soon can we see these products on the market?
So
pending approval.
Sure. So we're targeting the second half of calendar year 26.
Cool.
And in terms of our go-to-market strategy, we have flexibility to go direct or with a distributor. If we do go down the distributor path, we do expect to have an in-house sales team whose effectively mortgage repayments count on selling EMVision product.
Yeah.
Working alongside a distributor.
Yeah.
And then there's capital equipment, consumables, and service contracts.
Cool. Service is where a lot of investors want to see annual recurring revenue. So that's what we like to hear in these kind of interviews that we're doing. Finally, you're starting with stroke. Any plans to expand to any other areas like cancers or anything like that?
Sure. So I think if we achieve 30% of what we've talked about in stroke, EMVision will become a very large company.
Yeah.
But there is an exciting second planned indication, traumatic brain injury.
Cool.
Looking at falls, car accidents, assault, even military.
Yeah.
Helping differentiate is it a mild event, a moderate event, or a severe event?
Yeah.
Again, CT does a great job when it's available, but there are so many situations where it is not readily accessible.
Yeah.
Thereafter, our mantra is always do one thing, do it well. We're very much focused on the commercialization of the brain scanner program, but there are opportunities to apply the technology to torso, limbs, a whole lot of different areas. It really comes down to where is the greatest unmet clinical need?
Yeah.
What's the commercial opportunity? We've focused on stroke because it is such a burden and there is such an opportunity to have a positive impact there.
So 2 major catalysts this year for EMVision with the results out of the pivotal trial for the EMU device and then the scanner in the sky. So let's talk about that.
Sure. So we have both those studies on track to start this month, and there'll be plenty of progress updates along the way, the activation of various sites. We have some fantastic luminary sites in the US that we're looking forward to naming shortly. And then there'll be progress updates on the recruitment of patients, and then depending on the rate of that recruitment, we could have results as early as the second half of this calendar year.
It's a very exciting time. Scott Kirkland, thank you so much for joining us today for our interview on EMVision medical devices. We can't wait to see the results coming out and what you can achieve over the next 12 months. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.